My name is Suzanne Sasser, and I am here today with Leo Joseph Nowicki. Today's date is June 28th, 2019. Also in the room is Gary Ramsey operating the video equipment. And first of all, if you would just tell us your birth date, Mr. Nowicki.
July 20th, 1925. I was born on a Monday at 12 noon when the church bells were ringing. That my mother told me.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
And what were their names?
Joseph, Helen, Edward, and Dorothy.
And your parents' names?
Parents' name?
Yes, sir.
Well, you confuse me because it's a maiden name or they're okay. It's Stephanie and Joseph Nowicki.
Gotcha. And where did you say you were born?
Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
New Jersey. And the branch of the military you were in was the Navy, and you served in World War II. So we're going to start a little bit and talk about where you went to school.
I went to school at the Sacred Heart Grammar School, Sacred Heart Catholic School, and that was taught by the nuns. And from there I went to Sayreville High School. And after Sayreville High School I went to the Navy, and after I come out of the Navy I went to, under the GI Bill, I went for drafting, mechanical drafting, and then I went to work for Hercules Incorporated.
Fantastic. And what was your rank in the Navy?
Signalman 3rd class.
And were you enlisted or drafted?
I enlisted prior to the draft.
And why did you choose the Navy?
Well, my 2 cousins who were in the 77 Division, Statue of Liberty Division in New York, just came home from maneuvers in Arizona, and Joseph, the older cousin, said to me, "Leo, if you're going to enlist or wait for the draft, don't wait for the Army. Join the Navy," he says, "because in the Navy you have clean bed, good food, you can clean, you can wash." He said, "But in shower," he says, "but in the Army," he said, "we just came from maneuvers, we had to sleep on the ground, we ate K rations," he said, "and," he says, "drink warm water," he says, "join the Navy." And I took his advice.
Are you glad you did?
Yes, I am. Certainly, I'm here today, that's why.
So tell me the name of the ship that you served on.
It was Amphibious Forces, USS LCI Large 661.
And you wrote a book, or worked on a book, put a book
Yes.
together about that. Tell us a little bit about the book and a little bit about the ship, if you would.
Well, my children said to me, "Dad, we don't know anything about prior to your getting married, and Mom knew about different things, but we don't know what you've done in the service." So we decided that we would sit down, and I like a book that I can see pages, see pictures. I don't like to read, and then there's a little photo, then read again. So I tried to compose all of the pictures that I had, and all the things that I had that on board ship, and the activities, and that's why I put the book together. And I had their picture in it, and all of the pictures of my high school and everything else in it. So.
Would you mind holding the book up so that it can be visible on the camera? So it's the USS LCI Landing Craft Infantry, written by you, essentially. You're the only one who put it together then?
No, my wife and I.
Your wife and you. All right.
I made copies for each of the children. So they all have a book like that.
And what years did you serve?
From 1943 until 1946.
So what was your job while you were in the Navy?
My job was communications and signal recognition. Each ship in the Navy has a recognition, a name, a code name. And if you're at sea and another ship challenges you, you have to give them your current recognition name. And we have a book that has every ship in the Navy, and it's got their name on it, in it. And if you don't respond with a particular name that's from that book, they'll shoot you down, or you know, they'll shoot at you. So that's one of the things you had to update that book. And people don't understand when you're in convoy, and there's a whole bunch of ships, as far as you could see on either side. How do you tell each ship to make a right-hand turn and reduce the speed to half speed or full speed? The leader of the flotilla or the convoy, he raises a flag, and on that there's several flags, and it tells you right turn, 10 degrees, speed, so and so. And every ship in the convoy has to raise that same flag on its ship. And when the first ship lowers that flag, when the first ship lowers the flag, everybody has to lower their flag and execute at the same time. So you're all going in the same direction and not hitting each other. So that's where it's important that you know your flag recognition. And also, when you want to communicate with another ship in front of you, aside of you, you use semaphore flags. And you have a platform and you call them and talk to them with the semaphore, the code, Morse code. And then you have a light that you can call them, it's a Morse code. And you can talk to them with a light at night. So that's some of the things that you have to do as a signalman.
So great, and let's back up a little bit. Where did you do your basic training then once you enlisted?
My basic training was in, I'm trying to think of it was in Illinois, Great Lakes, Illinois was my basic training. And then I went to signal school at the same base where I was in basic training for another 16 weeks.
And did you have any other special training apart from your signal school training?
No.
Okay. And when you originally deployed, then, because you said you were primarily in the South Pacific, is that correct?
Yes.
Where did you launch from? Where did you ship?
We picked up the ship in outside of Boston, and we traveled all along the East Coast. And when we got to Norfolk, Virginia, that's where we had to pick up the recognition, build up the recognition, the book that gave us the recognition of all the ships. And we had to update that no matter where we went. I always had to go ashore and pick up the recognition. For example, one time the name of the recognition was Drunkard 1. And if anybody called, it was Drunkard 1, and it was colorful. That's why I always remember that one. But anyway, if someone challenged us, I just signaled back Drunkard 1. They'd look in the book, oh, that's one of ours. So that's where I remember that more than anything.
Now, I understand that your ship was an amphibious ship. Can you tell us a little bit more about the type of ship that you were on?
Well, it was a landing craft, and what we would pick up 200 troops and take them into various islands. We go from one island to another island. And we would be from the first wave to the fifth wave, depending upon what kind of ships that you had there. If you had a Higgins boat, they would come in before us. If you had an LST, they would come in after us. But we would come in like the second or third wave, because we had mostly the troops.
And how many were on your ship?
65 men, and that would run the ship. And then 4 officers and 65 enlisted men.
So where all did you go in the South Pacific?
We went, first we went all the way through the Panama Canal, and then to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor. And I have to tell you this story. My brother was in the Army 8th Air. It wasn't Air Force, but it was the Army Air. And he was stationed at Pearl Harbor, and I pulled into Pearl Harbor, and I knew he was there, so I went to see him at the Army Air Force there. And he says, "Come on, we're going to go down to the club." He says, "and we'll have a couple of drinks and spend the day." I said, "Okay." We went down to the club. I had my Navy uniform on. They wouldn't let me in. It was strictly for Army. So we went back to the barracks, and he says to one of the Air Force men, he says, "You're about his size, loan him one of your uniforms." I put on the Army, excuse me, I put on the Army Air Force, and we went back. I spent the day drinking and had a sandwich, and went back after about 8 hours, and I took my uniform off, put my Navy uniform on, and I tell everyone I was in the Air Force for 8 hours. And how in the hell did you do that? Well, that's how I did it. But that was colorful, but we accomplished what we wanted. And it was good because he took me around in Pearl Harbor to show me all of the, that's when Japan attacked the Pearl Harbor. And that's when it was still there, the damage was still there. It was terrible. But anyway, okay.
And after Pearl Harbor, where all did you go then?
We went to all the way to Port Moresby. That's in New Guinea. And that's when we pulled, we pulled into the harbor, and the captain says, "Well, we were at sea for 3 weeks. Anybody wants to go ashore can go ashore." Well, we all went ashore and walking around, and the Army was there with their guns. They said, "What are you people doing here?" "Well, we're coming ashore for liberty." He says, "This place isn't secured. You got snipers all over. Get out of here. Go back to your ship. You can't walk around here." And that was an experience we had that we never did that again. And then from there, we invaded Hollandia, New Guinea, and Aitope, A-I-T-E, Aitope, T-O-P-E. That's A-I-T-O-P-E. That was another landing we made with troops. And then we went up to Cape Sansepor. That was all in Dutch East Indies. And we landed troops there because they had the landing field there, and they wanted to use the landing field for the planes to go to Leyte. And then from there, we went to Ulithi. Ulithi was an island, and that's where they were gathering all of the ships to go into the invade Leyte Gulf. When we came in, there was maybe a couple of hundred ships. And the next 2 nights, when I woke up in the morning, so help me God, I never saw so many ships in one place at one time. It looked like you could step on one ship to another. That's how many ships were there. You had every kind of ship you can think of. You had aircraft carriers, battleships, you had small ships, you had destroyers, you had everything there. And that's when we all got together and went to Leyte from there. But people didn't understand that I had a chance to look at the invasion plans. Every ship had the invasion plan. And when I was up there on the bridge with the officers in the camp, that's where I had to be as a senator. And they would be discussing the different things that is happening. We had on the outer perimeters, you didn't even see the aircraft carriers or the battleships, but in the instructions they were there. All day you had P-38s and other planes over the convoy. At night, they had P-38 Black Widows. They were the ones that had radar, and they would protect the convoy at night. And I never knew that until I saw the plans on that. And that's when we went into Leyte. And that was an experience.
And was that your final destination, or did you continue on?
No, that's where we went for that landing. And while we were there, a plane, every night we would get bombed at the airfield. They didn't bother the ships in the harbor, but our job was to make smoke in the harbor and go all around the ships to cover the ships with the smoke. We had a smoke machine in the back of the stern of the ship, and we would make smoke in that harbor so that they couldn't see the ships down below. So they would hit the airstrip. And one night or one evening, I was at the bow gun. We called general quarters. The planes come over, and then they left. And I was on there with a fellow by the name of James Taylor from Kentucky. And a single plane came over, and we were shooting at the single plane. And he dropped his bombs. And we're sitting there, and I said to James, I said, after the bombs, you could see the flashes. And I said, small ones. And all of a sudden, the concussion started to shake the ship. That's when I learned that the speed of light was faster than the speed of sound. And he got away, the plane got away, and we were alongside of a big cargo ship. And he went, and that was the end of it. And a few minutes later, maybe 5 minutes later, that same plane came around the harbor and dove right into that big cargo ship that was alongside of us. And we went over and tried to put the fire out with our hoses, but it was burning too bad, so we took all of the ship's crew and we brought them ashore. And that was burning there for a couple of days. And we had to stay in that harbor until they tell us to move up and take troops somewhere. And one morning, or that night, every night we were getting a fleet of Japanese planes were dropping bombs, but they weren't bombing the ships, they were hitting the airstrip there. And everybody was shooting at the planes as they come up. We had the big lights on them, and everybody was shooting. if one went down, everybody took credit for it, but everybody was shooting, nobody knew who shot it down. But anyway, we did shoot a couple of them down. And the next morning, we looked out and we saw a lot of activities going on away from the ship. A lot of noise, and so we lowered our small boat and sent some people over to see what's going on. And when they came back, they said that there was a Japanese pilot or whoever it was that parachuted down whenever he got shot down. And there were Philippine people there, and they were beating them to death with their oars, and they killed them in there. They were very, very mean to the Philippine people, and that's where, when they saw that, that's what they done to them. It was a shame that they beat them to death with that. So that was the experience there.
And you mentioned, if we'll go back just for a minute, when you were in the Straits, that you could actually see the pilots of the Japanese planes.
That's when that was the next step. We took another group of people and we took them to the Ormoc corridor. And that was, the Japanese were, when we made a landing, nothing could live on that beach. You had ships that were shelling it, you had planes that were dropping bombs along there, so all of the Japanese troops would move inland, and our people would land on the beach. And what we were going to do, or the Americans were going to box in the Japanese at the Tacloban and Samar, and then go upstream to Ormoc and land the troops there and squeeze them in, kill them that way. And on the way out there to Ormoc, it was on the same Samar Island, we were attacked by Japanese planes. They were strafing, bombing, and some of them committed suicide. And we're all in a convoy. And the destroyer DD-369, USS Reed was a destroyer, got hit in the stern. And it ran right across our bow as we were in a convoy. Right across the bow, and it sunk in less than 2 minutes. It went back down, straight down. And we picked up 67 survivors and 1 dead. And the fellow that picked them up, on the stern of the ship, he said that he had his hand straight up, and he reached down, he grabbed him, and they pulled him up. He thought he was, putting his hand up there first to help him. And he said his whole back was all shot out. And they just laid him on a fantail of the ship. That's the stern of the ship. And if it wasn't for, that's where we got commendations from the Admiral and all, because when you're at a severe attack like that, and you're standing, picking up survivors, not underway, you're an easy target for anyone. But luckily, a monsoon came, and it rained so hard that the Japanese had to go off. But prior to that, we had an attack where the Japanese were strafing, and then right behind them was the Americans, pilots, and they were shooting the Japanese down. In the meantime, we were shooting at the Japanese, and when the Americans came over, we were shooting them. And the pilots were going like this with their wings, but we we were still shooting because we were still used to shooting at the Japanese. So when we got back to Leyte, the whole ship had to go for recognition, plane recognition ashore. So make sure we don't shoot them. But it was I guess when you're at the gun and you're shooting, you don't think, you just keep shooting and don't stop. And we were shooting at our own Americans until they start waving, going like that. I remember watching that. But that was the only thing that, we didn't shoot them down, so it was okay.
But you were so close to the planes that you could actually...
You could actually see because you were right along the shore. And when the planes were coming over, they didn't follow the water. They came over the rooftops. Over the treetops, and they were only how high is a tree? There was coconut trees, and they don't grow that high. And you could actually see when they came over their faces. That's how close they were there. And they had to get down the strafe there, but that was the only time that was real bad for that. A lot of people got, a lot of ships got sunk. And if we didn't have that monsoon, I think quite a few more would have been gone. That was that problem. But the only problem we had to go back to Leyte with the body that we had on the back. So we wouldn't have to dump them at sea. We brought them back. And then we picked up more troops. And then we went to the invasion of Bataan and Corregidor. It was, Nasugbu was the town next to Bataan and Corregidor, and that's where the landing was. And I remember I was looking at the invasion plans, and it was a little bridge there, and it was a sergeant, a Japanese sergeant, and 5 troops that were at that bridge, guarding the bridge. And that's where the Bataan and the Corregidor, they had to go up that way for Bataan and Corregidor. And that's where the small boats, the speed boats they had, these small ones with a bomb attached to the front. And they told us to be very careful because they're using these boats for suicide boats to sink ships. And we saw them along the beach. There was a nice beach there, but they weren't used. We were very lucky that we surprised them, I guess, to go in there. And from there, we went to Manila, and we were flat bottom so that we can come on the beach. And I have pictures here of some of the ships, some of the boats that were sunk there in the harbor. We could go into the harbor because we were flat bottom, but it was devastation there at Manila. And then we went from there to Lingayen Gulf. That was in Luzon. And we picked up Australian troops to take them to Borneo. And there was, I think, 7 LCIs and other ships that went to take these Australians to Borneo. And the rest of our group went to Okinawa and Iwo Jima. And we went to, thank God that we did go there because there was not, you could see when we got to Borneo, prior to going into the Borneo, we were at sea, and all of a sudden, we call it general quarters because the sea was black. We thought it was a submarine because you could see under the water, everything was black. And when we got closer, it was a school of those big skates, or whatever it is, with the wings like that, giant ones. And they were a school of them, and the sea was black with it. We thought it was a submarine, but it was that. So thank God for that. And then we dropped off the troops there, and you could see all of the big tanks, fuel tanks, oil tanks burning and everything there. And we came back to Leyte again. And I don't know why, but they had several ships, and we were one of them, that were to go back to the United States and to be converted for the invasion of Japan. And I could never figure out what conversion that we had to do to go into invasion of Japan. And when we were halfway between from Hawaii and San Francisco, that's when the war was over. And I remember that we couldn't put lights on or anything because we didn't know if the Japanese submarines knew that the war was over, so we had to be still at wartime condition. And you could see the next day in San Francisco, the whole sky was all lit up, because at night you didn't have, your whole country was dark. No lights shone, but now, that same day, the next night, you could see all the lights on and everything. And we got into Humboldt Bay, is where we were supposed to get converted. All our ships are going to be converted for. And I could never understand how, and I tried to find out from many people, how could they convert us for an invasion of Japan? Because the Japanese people were not going to allow anybody to come into their country. And whatever it was, I don't know what they were going to do to us, but that's what we went there for. But they never sent ships back to this country during wartime. You stayed there until the war was over. And I asked people, and there were some people that were high officials in the government, and I asked them if they ever knew, and they never, I couldn't find out what we were supposed to be. So what we done then, we spent our time in San Francisco at one of the piers, and we would take people, stevedores, every morning at 8 o'clock. We'd take them out to the ship, and they would load up these ammunition ships, and they would put good lumber in there, but they would have to brace them and stack them on the ship, and then at 5 o'clock we'd bring them back. But every day from morning till from Monday till Friday, that was the only duty we had till the end of the war. So that was it for.
So were you injured at all in any way while you were?
Well, when I came back here to this country, I got sick on board ship. And according to all of the records, they took me off the ship and put me on Treasure Island Hospital, in Treasure Island Hospital. That's between Oakland and San Francisco. And I was in there, and I don't even know how many days, but I was at the hospital, and I don't know, I was sick. I was really sick. And they treated me and all, and I got the records that they put me in a hospital. They don't have any records as how long, and I asked my medical doctor, I said, nobody tells me what I had, if I had anything. I said, I was sick, and I was very bad. And I said, nobody told me. He said, the only thing that they asked me different questions, and they said that the only thing that we could say now, but that's after the fact, that you probably had malaria. But that was the only thing. But nobody told me anything, and there was no record. But a record is showing me taken off the ship, showing me in the hospital, but not what they found.
Were there many casualties in your unit?
There was. I can tell you where when they went to Iwo Jima, I wasn't there, but I got, you know, records and talking to people from there. That was bad there. Yeah, we did get sunk. A couple of us did get, you know, ships got sunk. But luckily, we never had anything, I guess it was, my mother always said, Leo, in the letter she sent me, I go to church and I pray for you, safety. My godmother went to church and prayed for me, and I said, those two things were enough to save me. Now, I had a friend that just died. He was in the Marines, and I was up in New Jersey recently, and he was with the 3rd Marine Division, and when he was landing and fighting, he had rosary beads. And he said his sergeant was an atheist and says, what are you doing with those beads? Always carrying those beads around. He said, I'm praying, that's my rosary. He said, that ain't gonna do nothing for you. But he said, I prayed it and I survived. And when they were going into Iwo Jima, his ship, and he told me this, his ship broke down. So they were the 2nd day or the 3rd day coming into the landing. And he said when he came ashore, he says there was a captain there, and he said he landed, and he said I looked around and I saw all these dead people all over on the beach. And he said I started throwing up. And the captain says, you, and you pick these people up, put them on a Higgins boat. He says, sorry, sir, I can't do that. He said, I told you to pick these people up and put it on the Higgins boat. He said, I'm sorry, I can't. He said, if you don't, you're going to be laying alongside him. And they pulled this 45 out. He says, I picked them up, he says. And he said, about a month later, a couple of weeks, a month later, he says, the officer saw me and he says, you know, son, he said, I could have shot you, one, brought you up on charges for disobeying an order during battle. He said, you don't know how close you came. He said, but never do that again. He said, I learned from that, but there's experiences that you have, you know.
And what are some of your, yeah.
I want to tell you about, I'm going to go back to where I went to signal school. We had an aptitude test, and according to your aptitude test, they determine what school you're going to go to or go out to sea. Well, I looked at the list and I was going to, they had me scheduled for signal school. And I went back to the officer and I said, sir, I would like to be a cook. He said, why do you want to be a cook? I said, well, I like cooking, I says, and I'd like to be a cook. But really, what I wanted to do is be a cook so I can have good food. Pick my own food, eat good food. And I knew that you have strikers, the seamen, that clean everything up. All you do is cook, and they do, all the dirty dishes, they do it. So I said, I think I'd like to be a cook. He said, well, we've got you here. He says, why don't you try this for about 3 or 4 weeks, or 3 weeks. He said, then come back and see me if you still don't like it. Okay. 3 or 4 weeks, I went back and I told him, I said we'd like to be a cook. And he sat down there and he looked at me and he says, he got a pencil out and a paper. And they put how much time I spent in school, how much money I got paid, so much, I got education, so much. He says, too late now. He says, you can't go to be a cook, you gotta finish school. He checked up though, I was doing pretty good in there, that's why I think. But I always wanted to be a cook. That was a humorous thing that I was, but I was glad that I never got to that cooking school. I'm glad I was a signalman. I was happy with that.
Any particular instructors or other soldiers that you served or sailors that you served with that were in particular made an influence on you, or any other memorable stories that you want to share in particular?
No, I'm trying to think of anything. No, we're all like family. When you're on a board ship, you're family. You ever hear people say, your ship is better than the other one, and would fight you to make sure that you don't knock our ship or anything anything about our ship? Well, that's the way it is. You know, you're a Marine, or you're an Army, you're the greatest, and you're family. That is your new family. So, but,
can you tell us about your feelings when you first arrived in the South Pacific? You know, what you kind of, your feelings were there.
well, I remember you're at sea. All you do is see water, 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 nothing. And that's when I learned that the world was round. Because way off in the distance, I see a little stick out there. And all of a sudden, it's getting bigger. The stick is growing. And it's the mast of a ship. And all of a sudden, you could see the ship, you know, over a period of time. Maybe a couple hours, and then there's the top part of the ship. But I said, son of a gun, they were right. The world is round, and that's what I could see the ship, you know, from way out. That was the experience there, and they told us never throw garbage out, even at night, because that's when the sharks and everything would follow it, and you wouldn't want to be in the water with them, so.
And so you said, let's go back to the end of the war. What was your feeling? You know, what was on the ship? I know you said that you had to kind of keep everything still dark and sort of act like you were still at war because you weren't sure of the submariners, the Japanese. But otherwise, what was the feeling? What was your memories of your feeling when the war was over?
Well, I was happy that I survived. And we had, actually, my brother was in the Air Force, I was in the Navy, my younger brother was in the Maritime Service, and I had a sister that was the youngest, but she joined the WACS after the war. So we were all military people, you know, and we all survived.
Did your father serve also?
No, he was too young. My uncle did, though. He was in World War II, World War I. But my father was young.
Were you awarded any medals or citations or?
Well, we were accommodated by the and it's in the book here, the commendations that we got from the Admiral for being, you'd have to read it, tell you that we're under heavy enemy attack, and the ship went down in less than 2 minutes, and we were hazardous condition. It was that was the most dangerous when you're standing still. And we were commended. The whole ship got the commendation for that.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
By mail. And it was free, everything was free, just marked free on it, you know, you didn't have to have stamps. But you had to be careful on how you would write to your mother or father or girlfriend. I had girlfriends. And if there's something to show where you are located, they would cut it out. It was censored. The officers would censor every mail going out, and they would cut pieces out of it, you know. And my mother would send mail, you know, all the time, tell me what's going on there. But we get, every so often, a mail ship would come in, and it was a big bag, big mail bag, and it was with your ship number on it. And by the time they caught up to you, it was a couple months later. You didn't get mail that often, but when they caught up to you, you'd get a stack of, you know, pack of letters.
And how did you all entertain yourselves if you had any kind of downtime? Did you have downtime?
Well, we're very fortunate because, yes, we're very fortunate. We would put the beach, we would beach our ship. I went to the Philippines, and we went ashore. And there was a girl that I met, not me, but the group of us met this girl, and she had a rope and a wooden shield, a wooden thing for the knife. I don't know, holster, whatever you call it. And it was a homemade knife, big knife. And I bought it off the girl for $1 or $2 or something. And I was telling someone I bought this knife. You didn't? I said, yeah. Show me. Well, I got it in there with my stuff in there. I went in and I showed him that I did buy it. We used to go ashore and we'd meet. I got pictures of all of the Philippine women, children, and we'd go see, you know, different things. After it was secured, I'm talking about. But we did get an opportunity to go ashore, yes, a lot, quite a bit. So we saw a lot of the islands.
And did you eat the food of the islands then as well, or?
No,
no,
didn't eat any of their stuff, no.
What was the food on the ship like?
Excellent. We had good food, and some of the people didn't like lamb, mutton. They would throw it overboard. And same thing when I'm at, some people would, they didn't like to paint the ship. They'd have to chip the metal and paint it. At night they would throw some of the 5-gallon cans overboard. They got caught. So they had to, if you got caught doing that, they waited until you got to an island where they had a brig. It was a jail. And they would put you ashore into that brig while you were stationed there for a week or 2 weeks. But that was the only thing.
Can you recall any humorous or unusual events or pranks that you all pulled on each other? Any kind of fun or entertaining things you did?
I had a friend that he was with the 113th from home years ago. I grew up with him. He was in the 113th CB unit, and he drove a Higgins boat, and he would unload some of the big cargo ships. And I found out where he was, and I went to see him, and he told me what he's doing and everything. And I said to him one time, you know, what I miss? I said, I miss those nuts, the cashews and all those. So he brought me over a 5-gallon can of all kind of nuts. Then the next time he come over to see me, he would take a shower here and eat with us and with the Higgins boat. And I says, I need some cigars. He'd bring me Elroy Town cigar. He'd bring me 2 boxes of those. Then one time he came over and he said, I got some alcohol here that they use for torpedoes. And he says, he brought me a big can of alcohol. And we got some orange juice from the mess hall there. And we start putting this stuff, and some of the crew got drunk. And good thing we had to take them and put them down below where the troops used to go. We'd put them down there to sleep it off. And the reason I remember that, they were drinking all that stuff, and flies were there, and they were around them all over, and I said, oh boy, they're drunk. So we put them down there and had to hide them. None of the officers saw them there. But yeah, he used to take care of me with the supplies. But I said, how'd you get them, Joe? He said, well, I'm the guy that runs the boat. He says, and underneath there, there's like a trap door there, and I just put that stuff over there. He says, but yeah, he took good care of me. So there was no need. I had everything I wanted. What else you got there?
So what did you do as a career afterwards?
After what?
Afterwards, your career. You went back to school, or?
Yeah, I went under the GI Bill for a while, but I had a good life. I was, first I started off as a committee man in my district, Democratic committee man, because I didn't like certain things, and I got elected, and then I got to be chairman of the Democratic Party. And that's when I helped Senator Bill Bradley, and we got to be good friends. And then I made a U.S. or state senator, and I was his legislative aide for that. And then I had to go to work, of course, and I worked in the laboratory. And I was a technician. And I decided that I would be a shop steward. And then I got to be a guide, a vice president, and I got to be president of the union. It was for 15 years, and after work, just be a shop. From there, I went to be a commissioner on the authority, and I was doing that for 20 years. And then I was a chairman of the Industrial Commission, where I worked with, and all of these things were at the same time. I had all those positions at the same time. And I would work with plant managers and their officials, and to see if I can't keep them, their industry there, and help them with the negotiate or with the town fathers. And they said, how could you be a union person where you're a shot and a beer man? Then you got to be a commissioner where you're with engineers and everybody. And you have to be able to talk to them and work with them. Then you have to be with the managers of industry and all. And I said, I guess I just fit in, you know, but I done very well with it, and I held all those positions. And I got a very good retirement from them, and yeah, I had a good life.
And tell us a little bit more about your assisting Senator Bill Bradley, you said with military schools? Or?
Yeah, well, I was a chairman of the Democratic Party. And Senator Bill Bradley wanted to run, after he got through playing with the Knicks and graduated from Princeton, and he called all of the Democratic chairman to meet at a bowling alley. He wanted to talk to us. There was only 3 of us that showed up. And I talked to him, and he says, where's everybody? I said, I don't know. I said, they're loyal party people. And I says to him, I got him aside, and I said, Bill, I want to talk to you here, and I want a sincere answer. I said, I started to work with Dave Craviel to be governor. And I told him I would support him 100%. At the last minute, he pulled out. And I said, he left me hanging, and I don't want you to do that to me. If you think you're just saying that, and then you're going to drop out, tell me now, because I'm not going to support you. But if you say you're going to stay, and you're definitely going to run, I'll support you. And he never forgot that. He was a good friend, and if I called him for anything, he was there. I went to Washington, and I was at a Democratic meeting, no, luncheon, and he came there to be a guest speaker, and he was smart enough to know how he could contact you in the audience. He would say, I'm on call. He says, I'm going to have to leave in a hurry. How about that, Leo? You know about that, don't you? Didn't recognize that he saw you in there. That was, I couldn't believe that they do that. So then I asked, how do you people, when you come to a big dinner and you're a political person, how can you go up to the table and say, Jay, how you doing? How's Leslie? And see somebody else and say, hey, how's your wife after the operation? He said, how do you know these people? He said, well, I have my aides. They go in there and they tell me, when you go to table number 4 and table number 31, there's so-and-so, and ask about these people. I said, oh, that's how you find out. You phonies. But they did. They had a way of doing it. Yeah.
Would you say that your military experience influenced your thinking about the military in general?
About what?
Would you say that your military experience influenced your thinking about the military?
Yes, I believe. Yeah, oh, sure. Yeah. with
How
the
so?
experience.
Tell us.
Well, I believe that if we did not go there, we would be speaking Japanese and German today. And people don't understand that. They just don't know. Like the younger generation doesn't know how close they came. It's a shame that they don't know. People don't explain to them what's going on. Now, when we got bombed by the Japanese, everybody, I could look down the street, and I told my mother, I said, I was only a sophomore in high school, I said, Mom, there's nobody around. All the boys are gone. They're all in the service. They all joined up, you know, all of them. I said, there's nobody around. Look around. There's nothing. And they were all dedicated, too, to the service. They went and they fought. But today, it's a different world.
So if you could speak to today's generation about war and about the military, what would you say?
I'm trying to think that it's difficult because they have different ideals and everything is different today than it was then. See, people had nothing. I'll give you an example. When I went into the Navy, the food was excellent, and the people were complaining about the stuff. I said, geez, I loved it. You know, the food was good. Well, I'm not. I wasn't used. We were in the Depression years. We were supposed to be the greatest generation, but that's true. We didn't have that good food, and when we got there, the food was good for me. And some people, they just complained about it. Well, that's what it is today. I blame people that come out of the service. When they came out of the service, they said that I want my children to be better than I had it. And they spoiled them. Same thing with a doctor. When my children were small, I said to them, how long do I have to feed them these vitamins? He says, I says, they're in high school, they're big. He says, that's when they need them the most, because they eat junk food. You got to keep giving it to them. But look at the size of them today. Look at them here. The size, see what I... you know, that's what they said to me, that we spoiled them. We gave them more than we had.
Tell us about some of the reunions that you had. You started having reunions about what year and...
Oh, in the early 90s we started, before that. And there was a small group of people who got together, and they would have a meeting, and I think it was $5 was what, for a year to join it, you know. And there was one guy from New Jersey that was the secretary, and that's how I found out about that they're gonna do it. And then they started expanding, you know. And they had a good 800 people, everybody was coming to it, you know. Where you had, where you go to a hotel or something, the whole place was full of people. But now it's, they're all gone, there's not too many left. It was good to have that though. And what was memorable, I'll tell you one thing that impressed me. We had a memorial service for the departed veteran. And we would have a bell, a regular ship's bell, and we would put his name, his ship, and he departed, and ring the bell. And then after we had all of the people, every month we would have that. Prior to that, before we first started, we would have planes come over. We would have wreaths that we would put flowers out on, and we would have at some dock somewhere. But now we have it at the hotel memorial. And it was nice because under every chair in the memorial service, there was a glass of water, half a glass of water underneath the chairs. And I'm looking at that, and what's that chair? That's some glasses going in. And after they had all of these memorial services and the ringing the bell and everything, and they got up and said there was a big glass, like a vase, and the captain that was in charge got up and said, everyone bend down and look under their chair, there's a half a glass of water. And I want you all to line up here and go up here to this stage and say something, you don't have to say it loud, your friends, and then dump that water into that. And everybody done that. And that was so nice that they done that. And there was always something that we had that would, you know, bring something. And there was at our dinner, they had a table set up with salt and for different things that, for the person that's not there to be with us. They had a table all set up with no food on it, but everything else was all set up for him to, you know, for them. And that was nice. Everybody would go by and look at it. So we had nice, you know, different things. And we exchanged, we had hospitality rooms, and we would go exchange different stories and different things. So.
Are you a member of any military organizations now? VFW or American
VFW,
Legion?
I'm a life member of the VFW, yes.
American Legion, anything else?
VFW, Knights of Columbus and different things, yeah, different organization, yes, yeah. But I'm not, yeah.
And how would you say your service and your service experiences affected your life?
Well, I'm trying to think the proper words. I know what I want to say, but you appreciate something that you have. And you appreciate that you're here. Like I said about, I was so lucky. I have 4 children, 11 grandchildren, 19 great-grandchildren, and all of my children they come visit me, I visit them, I help them going to college. They come down there, visit me all the time, and Pop is right there, and they all call me, and I have no problem. They all have their children, and they're all happily married, and I'm so happy with that. You know, that's something great. I know some of the people that never had the opportunity, and it bothers me that some people that never had the chance to see their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. But I lived. I'm retired 31 years, and I had a good life. And I think everyone should go into the military, and for that is they learn to get along with people. They learn how to manage their money. They don't know their clothing, and take orders and give orders if they're in a good position. But I was in the Boy Scouts, and I went as high in the Boy Scouts as you could go. And I was supposed to be a professional, but I didn't want to go into that. But whenever I went to anything, I told my grandchildren that I wanted to be number one. I wanted to go to the top. I got to be the chairman of everything I went for. And my granddaughter, she is a controller for a company, and she says, "Papa, I remember what you said, and I only got one more step, and I'm going to be up at the top." She says, "Just like you said, you always went, and you always went to the top." And I told them that's what you have to do. If you don't, I said, either you're going to use your brain or use your back. I said, if you use your brain, you tell other people to do it. But if you don't, you're going to be working hard all your life. And I tried to impress them with that. And that's why they all did very well in school. They all like the one that she went, I think 7 years after college, she went to the Rockefeller University, and she was in the gifted class, all the way from high school to college to, right on through, and she got offers, Duke, Oxford, Harvard, I think 7 colleges, full for a doctorate. She took Rockefeller University because Harvard only gave her 2 years, and then they'd see if they had money for the next 2 years. Rockefeller University gave her 6 years of education. They paid her $36,000 to go because she was in the gifted class, and she graduated top of the class in the gifted class, tied for first place. And that's why she went there for 7 years, and now she got Stanford in California. She went there for an interview, and they hired her as a professor. But she didn't take it. She took the job in NYU because she's close to home, and she took the job there as for a doctorate. So I tried to impress on them what you've got to learn and study. And now my youngest one, Emma, she's the oldest boy. He graduated, like I said, 12 in his class out of 700. Now the girl said, "I want to be just like him." She said, she's in 6th grade. She says, "I want to be just like you." So they followed, And that I'm so happy when she told me she wants to be like him. And I give them encouragement, But it's good.
That's great, and I know you're super proud of them. And thank you so much. It's been such an honor and a privilege interviewing you. Is there anything else you can think of that you didn't include?
I probably will think of a lot more, but I'll tell you, the book, there's other books that I had over there. If you had time to look at them sometime, it's my album that I had, with what I went through and everything. But yeah, it's good. I just hope people will listen and try to fulfill their lives, instead of people being on drugs and everything today like they did. We didn't have that before. We never had anything like that. Today, it's a different world. I don't like some of it, but you gotta accept change. And I don't know. I'm lucky I got friends all over, you know, so it's okay. I did, you know what, another thing, you're all done now, right?
No, you're still on.
You know, I was a union person, and I always tell this story. I had a black American, he come to me, and I was the union president, and he said, you know, Leo, I got a problem. I said, what's your problem? He says, my rent is $400. Every payday, Friday, I put $100 in a drawer. Next Friday, I put $100 in the drawer. Third Friday, I put no, I take $100 out. He said, then fourth one, he said, I don't have enough for the rent. And he told me about that several times. So I was thinking. So then I said, you know what, I'm going to start a credit union. So with the $25, I went and got the charter of a credit union. And I started a credit union there. And my daughter, I asked her if she would help me out and work for, you know, and I got the company to give me their old typewriters, desk, chairs that they were going to throw out, old ones. And they gave me a little room so I can start my little thing. And it was maybe 2 years later, then I started backing off and I got people involved in it. And I tried to merge with another one, but their charter says, well, we couldn't merge. So anyway, I got a call about 2 years later. See what I want, I'm not familiar with the banking. So I called the bank people and I says, if I deposited money, would you give me some you know, so much money for to put the money in so that these people don't lose money, that I have the money there. Oh yeah. So I got a call from one of the clerks or whoever it was, cashier at the bank, and says, Leo, yeah, I got a problem here. I got a black man here who has got a $10,000 check with your credit union. Could you come down and identify him? I says, yeah, all right. So I come down and I walked into the bank and I walked, hey, Jonesy, how you doing? What are you doing here? You know, and then he says, oh, I gotta get my check here, so I gotta buy a car for my daughter. Oh, and oh, by the way, I checked up that he had money in there. He had the money, $10,000 check he had. So it was okay. So I went in and I winked to her and I waved, she's okay. Okay, she says, you know, she was holding it up. But see how that worked out? Oh yeah, you know, oh, I forgot what I told you. Every time I saw him in work, I says, you're working overtime, don't forget you got to put some money in there. When you cash your check, I want you to put money in there. And I always told him that. Every time I saw him, I would tell him that, encourage him. And see, he had $10,000 in there, and he could buy a car. I said, son of a gun. And here, all that while, he didn't have it. But that's what made me start it. Him, old Jonesy. But that was one story about that.
It sounds like most of your life you spent extra time trying to be a good influence on others.
I help people. I help people. When I was in politics, I helped more people than you could ever believe. Getting them in nursing homes, getting them jobs and different things, you know. And I was a legislative aide for a senator. I knew, I was a lobbyist. I lobbied in Washington. And I had friends. And the only way I done that was, and people says, how did you, and I went there to lobby, and I beat France. They put $800,000 fine and so much tariff on any nitrocellulose coming into this country. And I fought Japanese too. But anyway, I knew people, like if you knew a senator, and I'd call you and I'd say, hey, how about writing a letter to him and ask him if he can help me out so we could see him. And I had people that came in from they were, what was their position? They were like, for the company, they were the overseers of all that. And I would have them come in to make the speeches. I would just introduce them. But I was there for like 2 or 3 days, going from senator to, International Trade Commission members. And I got, like if he knew somebody and I knew him, I'd ask him if he could call that guy, you know, and he'd call. And I had one guy that was an international, it was International Trade Commission. One guy was for Colgate-Palmolive. He was a patent attorney for them. Another guy was the guy that got in trouble from out west. He was running for president, then he got caught running around with a girl, and he had to drop out. And there was Nick Venetia, who was a chairman, and he was with the senator from Texas. So I had all these people, I contacted them, and they helped me out that way. And when I got there, we just went in to see him, and we beat him. But like you say, I'm not that smart, but I knew how to get around to people. And people were what I like. I like to talk to people, do things for people. That's why I was always elected for everything. And I always got elected, then I went through everything. I got my books here yet, these different political things. Yeah.
Mr. Nowicki, it has been such an honor and privilege. Thank you so much for your
Okay.
interview today. And if you have photos, we'd be more than happy to submit those as well to the Library of Congress. Thank you.
Well, now I'm just taking it easy and don't do anything anymore.
As far as photos go, if you do